how do you describe your genre or style of music? This is always a great question because I don't like to describe it, but I don't think anybody likes to describe it. So let me just tell you a little bit of the history of what's important to me about music, because I think that I combine all these different genres of music, and I think many people do, and as do I, into what is me, what I express, how I express myself. My very first love of music was music theater. I grew up writing musical theater, and I started playing the harp in the intention of supporting my musical theater habit, and then the harp kind of took off. When I was playing the harp, I started out with classical music, but I felt very confined by that. And I was really interested in whether you could play jazz on the harp. And I had this boyfriend who really loved jazz, and so I said to him, I said, do you think I could play that on the harp? And he was like, what, this jazz stuff? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, no, you can't do that on the harp. So that determined me I absolutely had to do that. And fortunately for me, and I didn't realize this, my background in learning music, I never learned how to read music, like the music on the page. My mother taught me when I was 10 how to read lead sheets. So she taught me to cheat. And turns out that is the foundation of playing jazz. So I already knew how to read jazz charts, but that was just the foundation. And I started working with a bass player who taught me how to play jazz, and we just spent night after night after night learning how to play jazz standards. So I completely immersed myself into playing really straight ahead jazz, taking what I had learned from guitarists and pianists and putting them into the harp so that there was a kind of harp jazz, and then I put together a trio called the Jazz Harp Trio. And I performed with them a lot, and it was always performing standard. So I really separated my life, my musical theater writing life, from my jazz playing life. And when that group broke up, I was offered a record contract with a contemporary jazz label. And the contemporary jazz label wanted me to write original music, which I was already starting to do. I was already starting to actually combine classical suites with jazz. And if you go back and hear The Flight of the Phoenix or Journey to Sunrise, these were suites that were combining jazz and classical ideas. But then when I started with a record label, they wanted me to take a lot of that music but take it out of the suites, so take it out of the more sort of storytelling form, because I was creating storytelling forms but with jazz and instrumentalism. When I was with a contemporary label, they had me take those out of the storytelling form and just sort of create them as more contemporary jazz, each individual piece. So I was with that label for 3 years, and during that time I started playing with more and more and more players, and I started realizing that I wanted to express myself more. And without going into the whole story, it became important to me to start to combine this part of me that started out, the musical theater, that storytelling, voice and music, together with the improvisation and the virtuosity and really exploring an instrument. And along the same time of this, I was also realizing that I physically needed to move. So I was working with Kamak harps on shrinking down the big concert harp so that I could put it on, so that I could wear it. So all of these things were coming together into the music that I'm playing now, which is very physical. It combines jazz ideas, though not standard jazz playing, meaning I'm not playing jazz standards, but I'm using improvisation and I'm using a lot of the ideas from blues, but I'm also putting them together more with story, and I'm also singing. So what I've been trying to do for the last 10 years is, I started out saying, okay, well, the harp is going to support the musical theater, and they're going to be separate things because they're separate things, and realizing, no, these things exist in me. I need to combine them. I need to make them one in what I do. And that doesn't mean I don't love to play jazz and I don't love to write musical theater, but what I would describe I'm doing now is combining my background in musical theater, in classical forms, and in jazz improvisation, and in my love for virtuosic, dramatic, flamenco type, just like that, I'm gonna just make it big stuff. I don't know what you'd call that. So to combine all of that in one style, which I do not have a name for, unless that name is just Deborah Henson-Conant.